Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I am Brad with Fine Tune, and today we have a 328D here, and we're going to be fixing a major oil leak on this vehicle. There's a stanchion that goes into the side. So the first thing on this vehicle that we need to dive into is we'll take off the air filter first, we'll drain the oil, and we'll drain the coolant on this, and then we could start diving into this assembly over here. And by the way, this whole oil filter housing is right over here in this direction. I'm not too sure, or I guess I don't remember if in the past I had to take off that manifold to get to it or not, but we'll try it without it and see how that goes. But if we need to, we'll take off the intake manifold on this. All right, we got the oil done. We're going to do coolant next. Tech tip here, under the bed storage bins work really well for collecting coolant. So we'll go ahead and throw this underneath here. And then right where the thermostat is, we will take off this coolant hose and let everything dump out. No, we got oil in our coolant. So this is actually a lot worse than what I thought it was going to be. So yeah, if you look down here, we got oil mixed in the cooling system, which isn't ideal, but it'll be fixed when we replace everything. We got our two fluids drained. I got the oil filter out of here. The next step that we're going to do is get this ECU box and the wiring harness out of the way. I got a T25 on this thing. We'll go ahead and zip all these off. And then after I zip all these things off, make sure you don't drop them as well, because those are very special bolts. But after I zip these all off, there's an 8mm holding this box on. Okay, now we're in here. We have to disassemble quite a few things, or unplug quite a few things. If you feel like it, you could disconnect the battery, but if you want to be like me, you don't have to disconnect the battery, because I got a scan tool to clear off all the fault codes. Okay, the wiring set aside here. We got two 8mm holding this box together, and once we get those two off, this will open up a ton of room for us to access that oil filter housing. Those two bolts are off. We'll just lift up and out on this thing. There's a stanchion that goes into the side of this pillar here. Okay, we got a 13mm with this alternator right here. I'm not going to disconnect this guy right from it, because this can be a welder if it touches anything on the metal side of things. This one right here is for the glow plug module, so we'll just put it out of the way. And then we'll take off this coolant hose right here. I felt it crack. I didn't feel it crack, I felt it get loose. So we'll shove this radiator hose line out of the way. And we'll go ahead and take off this hose here, which is for the heater core. That one's a lot easier. We'll bend this out of the way. And then we'll take off this coolant hose down here. This coolant hose is for the transmission cooler. So we'll put that guy out of the way. Next thing that we have to take off is this dipstick tube right there. That's a T30. And then we have to take off the transmission cooler lines. So that is a E8 down at the very bottom. Sometimes you just have to feel these things out. Okay, look at that bolt. She's out. Okay, that bolt's out. We're going to pull the transmission lines off this. I just do a little wiggle and push down at the same time. And you'll have transmission oil spewing out of this thing. We'll go ahead and wrap this just so no debris gets into it. We have access to that oil filter housing cluster, and I just wanted to give you guys an overview of what we're doing now. So we have 6 bolts that this whole thing attaches to. So we'll go ahead and go in there and pull these 6 bolts off as assembly. They are 10 millimeter on this 328D. On like an X5 or maybe a 535D, they're normally an E10. Sometimes they can be a 13 millimeter, but this one is a 10 millimeter head. So we'll pull all those off and we should be able to get that thing out as assembly. It looks like we got plenty of space here to work with. It sometimes gets tight on like the X5 or the 535D and even the X3 to pull these off, but on this 328D, it looks like we could get it out without touching that intake manifold. This is my weapon of choice here. 10 shallow with a wobble with like a 1 or 2 inch extension, and then we got like a 6 to 7 inch extension here with the Milwaukee 1/4 inch ratchet. I'm going to do the hard ones down at the bottom first. That way I'm not struggling doing one bolt to get the whole thing off. So we'll go ahead and do the bottom left here first. All right, I got 1 bolt left in the upper left-hand corner. I am going to retrieve the bolts that are left in there. And then we're going to pull that upper left one out of there. I got 1 bolt left. We will go ahead and pull the last one. Okay, last and final one's pulled. We're just going to crack this free and then try and finagle it out of this place. It will leak coolant and oil. Let me reposition the coolant bin. So we have to rewind just a little bit here. The steering arm the steering shaft is in the way here, and we also have this coolant neck in the way. And since we didn't take off the intake manifold, we can't take off the coolant neck. So we're actually going to remove this cooler up front with the T30s, and that will take off 1 layer. And then if we need to go deeper, we could also take off the thermostat housing for the transmission cooler as well. And that should give us enough room to slip this whole assembly out of here. All right, we got that cooler out of the way. We'll see if we could pull that out now. If not, we'll go ahead and pull off this thermostat housing. So we're taking off this transmission thermostat here. Oh no. You know what's happening there? That's fine though. Okay, we got that transmission thermostat housing out of the way. I literally just broke it off of here because that was the best way to get that off, because that thing is seized in there. And then now we could rotate this out of the way. Got AC line in our way though. Okay. All right, over here we have, this is the old thermostat housing. So I just broke this up out of the way. We have to get this bolt out of here, which shouldn't be too big of a deal. But let's flip this over on the back side here. Yeah, this looks pretty messy. So I'm assuming we have a gasket here that is no longer part of the program. So I'm assuming this is what failed, the base gasket. Oh, that's also broken there too, the thermostat. Here, let's get that out of the way. The pin there and whatever's supposed to be there, so that's not cool. But yeah, I mean, it's so this is what this side of the vehicle looks like. We got that whole cluster out of the way. It could be easier for you to take off the intake manifold, or it may be easier for you just to leave the intake manifold on. So there's really two ways that you could go about doing it. For me, it's probably easier to do the intake manifold, but for you, it definitely might be easier just to do this route of it. I'm very proficient with taking off these intake manifolds. If that's something that you guys want to do, we have another video of the valve cover gasket, and it clearly shows you how to take off this intake manifold. And it just might be easier to replace this coolant pipe and do this whole assembly as a whole unit together. So we'll go over this table here, and we'll review this and put it all together with all the new parts. We'll go ahead and take this off here. So the whole reason why I just replace everything at once is because I really don't know what exactly fails in here. You know, you got O-rings on this side, you have O-rings on this side, you have a gasket on this side, and then on the thermostat side, you got O-rings here, but also O-rings on the front side too. So it's like, this could just literally be leaking anywhere. So just go ahead and spend the money, replace all this. I believe this whole kit here is around $550, somewhere in there from FCP Euro. It is pretty expensive, but you don't want to be that guy with your BMW leaking oil. These engines do not leak oil, I guess. I mean, this one obviously was, but normally they do not leak oil like, you know, some N55s and N54s out there that just leak just because they want to leak. We'll get this cleaned up, we'll get it fixed, we'll get it back on the road and not leaking. But you have to clean off these coolers very well, just so that they'll seal nicely. What I like to do is I like to peel off all these rubber gaskets first, and then I'll actually go over it with some wet sandpaper too, just to make a nice flat sealing surface again. That way we have no issues with anything sealing up and being nice. So I got some WD-40 here with some sandpaper, and we'll just lightly sand some of this down. Make a nice flat surface. I have this tilted up, that way no debris falls down into the oil cooler itself. We have to flush out the system too, because there was oil in the coolant as well. So we still have a little more right here to do and a little more right there to do. Okay, so we got this surface cleaned up on both sides, and we also got the transmission cooler surface cleaned up. So just nice and clean, just for it to seal really nice on the O-ring. And upon cleaning this, we have some debris in there. So that's probably from the thermostat of the oil cooler, I'd imagine, on the back side of here. So I'm going to try and clean that out. You see how that's bad? I don't know if that's a thermostat. No, it has to be a thermostat in here, because on this one, it has that guy right there. So, or that could be the bypass for the oil cooler. Either way, whatever it is, it's broken and we need to get it out of here. So we're going to grab some needle nose and try and do some fishing today. So this was in here, that was in here, that was in there, this, and that was in the cooler. So tech tip there, just watch out for debris in these coolers. You don't want to have any of that clogged up in there. So good that we found that and inspected that cooler. And then now we'll go ahead and put this cooler onto this oil filter housing. Okay, we got our parts cleaned off. We are going to start installing this stuff. Just make sure that when you guys receive these, that you have all the O-rings in their correct places. This one was just laying in the box somewhere, so that one's in. We got the two front ones in as well. What I like to do is I just lube up these seals with a little bit of transmission grease. That way they seat nicely onto the aluminum cooler. Some people say do a dry. I prefer lubing. And then we put this in like so. And then we'll put on those two T50 coarse thread bolts. So for me, I don't have to put these two on right now, but if you're taking off the intake manifold and you're doing this as assembly, then I'll show you guys here. So basically, you got the thermostat housing right here, and we have short bolts, we got long bolts. Just be smart about where they go, but here is just a quick reference on where they actually go. We got long there, long there. Well, I guess let's rewind here. For this one, we got short and short. Those three short ones go there, and then the cooler goes on. And then we have a long bolt there, a long bolt here, long, long, short one here, and a short one right there. And that's how those bolts go on this. Okay, now it's time to put on this gasket here. I have a nice clean surface with brake cleaner. And then we have to open up this gasket. I use L-ring for the gasket on the vehicle side. I believe it's, I don't know, 20 bucks cheaper than the original BMW one. This is the only thing I would go aftermarket on this, because I'm pretty sure L-ring actually makes this for BMW, so it's a safe bet there. We will put some lube on these placeholders here. And then I just like to put a skim coat of lube on here. That way it seats down nicely for us. And then these two nubbers right here, they go into this housing. Line it up, push that side in, push this side in. And now it won't fall off when we go to install this thing. Okay, we got the block side of things cleaned up on this 328D. We found some more carnage on the engine side of things, so just make sure when you guys are doing it that you inspect thoroughly on everything, all the damages that this can do to your vehicle. So we'll go ahead and put this whole assembly on next, and it's pretty much just reverse procedure of what we did. All right, I'm actually going to remove the inlet and outlet of this high pressure fuel pump here, just so I could swivel this dipstick over on the right side to give me some room to put it in. I kind of struggled pulling this thing out with the dipstick in the way. Yes, I can pull a dipstick out of the oil pan, but I mean, there's a lot of debris and stuff. It goes through the engine mount there, and I just didn't want all that debris to fall down in the oil pan and open up another can of worms. Torque spec on this is 10 Newton meters. The tightening torque for this thermostat is 8 Newton meters. Go ahead and put this oil cooler on. Okay, now we got that torque to spec. It's time to put on the transmission oil line. I'll just wipe these down with a paper towel, and then I will apply a little bit of lube to the O-rings, and then we can go ahead and put them back in their place. Okay, we got the transmission lines on. The torque spec for that is 8 Newton meters, and now we'll just go ahead and put in all these coolant lines. Once again, with the coolant lines, I like to put a little bit of lube on these just so that they seal nicely. And then after we're done with coolant lines, we'll go ahead and put those fuel lines on. it's time to put the ECU box on. Okay, we lifted the car up. We're just going to drain out this oil. There's just some residual oil left out over here because we let it sit overnight. So basically the next steps for this vehicle in particular is we're going to pressure wash the underneath side of this and pressure wash the top side just to get all this oil residue out of the underneath side of this, because it's just absolutely disgusting down here just from this oil filter housing. In this particular vehicle, the oil did mix with some of the coolant, so we'll have to flush out this system, and then after that's done, we'll fill it up with coolant and be absolutely done with this vehicle. But that's just kind of like a quick overview of the next steps on this vehicle. We probably won't show everything just because it does take some time to film these videos, but yeah. If you guys thought this was helpful, please like and subscribe, and hope this helped you guys out.